The past few weeks I've been looking to do a political video with all this politics shit ramping up, and I find myself struggling to put out something that I'm satisfied that's worthy of your time. And the hardest thing for me to deal with is my own desire to not repeat myself and not to produce repetitious content for you, even though a lot of audiences want reinforcing videos that reinforce other videos. Basically, a lot of times what any kind of fan of any kind of content wants is actually the same thing over and over again, or something similar to the same thing over and over again. And I actually have a habit of pissing off my audience by diversifying the shit I do. Everything from video game shit to UFC shit to artistic whatever shit to philosophy shit to interpreting psychopaths shit. It's kind of a shotgun blast of random bullshit that, of course, should irritate people, and yet it's, for some reason, what I think I should be giving you, because even guys like me can be irrational. But I also don't want to just repeatedly blather shit to you for one reason. A lot of people call me smart because of the way I talk. And a lot of people think I'm an idiot because of the way I talk. Those are two contradictory conclusions. Why do they come to those conclusions? Well, so many people hear me swear. They hear me use rather simplistic terms of phrase. I'm not offering particularly a lot of nuance or benefit of the doubt to my opponent. I'm not steel-manning people. And they think it's unsportsmanlike and boorish. And a lot of people, you'll find, especially arguing with leftists, especially the kind of people who amalgamate around bullshit hyper-leftist places like Reset Area, oh my god, NeoGAF, liberal arts students, Tumblr, Twitter especially. A lot of them who will, in one breath, swear colorfully and constantly, and in the next breath say that literally nothing you say is of any merit if you swear the wrong way or swear too much, or in fact swear at all when you express it. That tone can disqualify you. This is an old concept that I'm surprised people don't mention anymore, because it goes along with all the regular leftist gaslighting. It's not the word gaslighting, but it's all a form of gaslighting. This one would be tone policing, that if you are obviously angry, you are immediately wrong. This doesn't make any fucking sense either. But the ones that fancy themselves smarting and sportsmen, or sporting and I don't know what I was trying to say there. It's a little bit early in the morning. The ones that fancy themselves the smarty pants just like to attack the fact that I explain simple, in fact sometimes emotional concepts, and they'll say, oh, you're just like them. But mostly what they are actually triggered by is not even the emotion or the tone, it's just the simplicity of my arguments, that they are very basic. And the reason for that is that really, at the end of the day, wit, which is a lost art, is the ability to break something down that either is complicated or far more often looks complicated but isn't, into uncomplicated and simple terms. That's what I do. Now, it doesn't always lend itself to particularly persuasive arguments on movies or video games. A lot of people just come, and if they agree with me, they agree with me. And some people do say, oh, you've given me a new perspective, but for the most part, if they came in not agreeing with me on a video game, they stay that way. And if they came in agreeing with me, they stay that way, which means I suck at that job, objectively. But one thing I've always done well is break down political and philosophical and moral, especially, concepts into simple terms, because these are simple subjects that societies and intelligentsias throughout time have lied to us, and more importantly, lied to themselves and tried to say we're complex. And they are not. And in fact, when you can read a bunch of bullshit from progressive philosophers like John Paul Sartre and shit, and you realize that their language looks incredibly complex. It looks so esoteric it might as well be magical spells and conjurations. In fact, you'll see that no matter what, the more retarded and nonsensical a person is, the more that they will seek to complicate their terms in order to hide the fact that they actually have nothing of legitimate value or import to say. And you'll also find that some of the people throughout popular culture who have been considered the most wise were in fact the most curmudgeonly, angry, boorish, just kind of low down, simple, salt of the earth people. People like George Carlin, Mark Twain, what was his name? There's so many leftists and people I've met who are like interested in that one fucking Earl or something that was gay and shit. And everyone loved how sarcastic and angry he always was and how down on society he always was. And the thing is, a lot of us actually don't, especially people like Carlin and Twain, the people I know the best, don't really judge society from a point of hate. They judge it from a point of disappointment and disgust. I actually don't hate any of the people that I talk down to. This is why I talk down to white people, wealthy people. I talk down to white poor people. I definitely talk down to white trash. I talk down to the religious. I talk down to the obnoxiously atheist. I talk down to the liberal, the progressive, especially the communist. I talk down to religicons and tradcons and just short-sighted, myopic people in general, because I feel like they don't see a big picture, and I am disgusted that they don't see a big picture, because I think the big picture is actually remarkably low resolution and rather easy to digest. That in fact, sometimes I have more in common with hippies that ruined our culture than I do with any kind of intellectuals who are still currently trying to drag us back out of this attempted dark age crashing that we're attempting right now with progressive leftism. Because a lot of them had a healthy distrust of authority, which I believe is a sign of high intelligence, self-assuredness, and the willingness to judge things. So many people are so terribly afraid of judging things. Shh, let other people like things. No, fuck you. Let me judge you for liking it. You don't have to listen to me, but you better believe that no matter what, you have to go to bed at night knowing that I'm out here telling somebody, if it's not you, it's somebody, that you're a fucking dumbass. And I'm not sorry. So in some ways, maybe I do sound kind of like a progressive leftist sometimes. Because a lot of people say, like, why do you always say they're fucking evil? Because they are. Why do you always say they always lie 100% of the time? That's not true. No, it is true. That's why I'm saying it. And a lot of people think, how could something be so black and white? I've been assured that in order to actually have anything of value to say, in fact, in order to be right, you have to be handing out this benefit of the doubt like Catholic indulgences for sin, and you have to fucking nuance fagging. No, there is a time and place for nuance, and then there are plenty, in fact, I think a majority of places where nuance is actually nowhere to be found and things are cut and dry. Things are simple. So this is why some people think I'm retarded and some people think I'm a genius, because I say things are simple 9 times out of 10. And then I break down what looks complicated into a simple concept. Economics, for instance, is one of the most esoteric and difficult to understand parts of politics, and it's that way by deliberate, malicious design, actually. And that simple concepts like money doesn't grow on trees, the government actually doesn't produce goods, therefore, why do you want the government to provide you all these services when the government, it doesn't provide anything? The citizenry is providing it to itself, but the citizenry no longer has a choice once the government is in charge of distributing that service and collecting the funds for it. It becomes immediately the law that if you break it, or if you try to conscientiously object to it the same way one might to the fucking Vietnam War, you go to jail. Protesting, in fact, is a hazard to your fucking health. Because the more you allow the centralized state to have fucking control of fucking everything, the less you have any ability to resist, and in fact, oftentimes you'll find that society is so fucking stupid that they believe the government does right in their brains, while even their mouth is saying, oh, the government, the man, this, that, and the other thing. But if you look in all their ideas, all their actions, all they want is for the government to have all the fucking power in the world, as long as they get to be the man. That kind of fucking shit is stuff that, like, tales, fantasy tales, fairy tales, big historical epics, religious parables, everything all throughout society, from all the way back into the fucking way past the Dark Ages, into the fucking Bronze Age. People were telling us in all our stories that there are so many people who pretend or act or may even think that what they're doing is right, but if you look at them, they are hypocrites. Pretty much the entire progressive left pretends to be afraid of the man, but they're not afraid of the man. They just want to be the man, and they're hysterical, absolutely batshit insane, like a fucking belligerent child kicking and screaming and thrashing and breaking things. If I can't be the man, no one can be the man. But then if I'm the man's the most important thing in the world. It's hypocrisy. It's simple. So, look, if your idea of a solution to everything, even if you claim and purport and even mean to be altruistic, but if your idea is to use force, to use control, to use the law at every single turn, to operate private things like healthcare, charity, if your idea of helping the poor is redistribution of wealth, which is basically theft, you're not a good guy. You're a hypocrite, and you're actually evil. And what a lot of people don't get is the same thing that a lot of progressives do get, and they say all the time, and they think it makes them smart for understanding this concept. How many leftists do you hear say something along the lines of, nobody believes they're evil. All the villains are like Thanos, believing they're doing a great good as they're enacting a Holocaust. That is actually often true. Now, progressives want to say that that is a fast and hard rule, but it's not. Malice, willful malice, is one of the reasons why I am so thoroughly disgusted and incredibly uncharitable to the progressive left. I have operated my past couple of political videos basically outright admitting, being open to you, the audience, that I deliberately and with good reason dehumanize the progressive left, that I don't believe they are worthy of human compassion or any kind of a human charity, whether it's the benefit of the doubt or any kind of sportsmanlike play, because I believe they are fucking monsters, and I think a significant portion of them know they are monsters and are not sorry. Now, there is a whole heaping helping of ignorant, useful idiots, tools, manipulated people, cowards who operate under the fucking sheer weight of peer pressure. All of the above. But the people at the top, calling the shots, are knowingly evil. And so many people pretend that doesn't exist. And that is something that is hard to explain in a convincing way, because you're going to lapse into stereotypes. You're going to have to fucking explain that there really is a Snidely Whiplash villain out there doing this, who for either financial gain, control, or a sheer hatred of the populace, or more likely all three, are really out there doing that shit. Excuse me. Burp the coffee. Doing that shit. There are people like George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton, indeed. On the right wing, people like Dick Cheney. They are real. Henry Kissinger, they are very real. And they are the real cause of suffering. And people are not afraid of people like that. They're afraid of the most simple, straightforward things that jar them out of their preconceptions of the way the world is supposed to be. Donald Trump, when you look into his policies, is such a middle-of-the-road guy that, honestly, his politic shit, in a lot of ways, not of course every way, is very similar to Bill Clinton. And there's a reason for that. Donald Trump used to be a supporter of Bill Clinton. He was a Democrat for almost all of his life. So when you take a bunch of liberals who were alive for a whole bunch of this, or indeed all of this history, where Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are handing Trump awards and Trump is raising millions of dollars for the Clinton campaign, and then they look at him just a scant 20, 25 years later, and he is the exact same person doing the exact same thing, but because he's a Republican, who is the most left-wing Republican I've ever seen in office in my lifetime. he's the devil. They're more scared of him than Reagan. They're more scared of him than McCarthy. And I don't know why. And that they are willing to say, God, I miss George Bush. George Bush was better than Trump. No, that's not a matter of opinion. George Bush is a fucking war criminal. He deserves to die. Normally what we do to war criminals who do things like George W. Bush is we take them to an international court and then we hang them until they die for crimes against humanity. This kind of juxtaposition, or I don't even know what the word for it, this kind of disparity in what should be and what is with the left is part of why I dehumanize them. You take a monster who is basically guilty of enacting a crime at the level of a Holocaust. The amount of lives, the destruction of entire countries, not just American lives, but Iraqi lives and Iranian lives and Saudi Arabian lives and Yemeni lives and fucking Sudanese lives and Afghani lives, Pakistani lives. The amount of people who have died as a result of the actions of George Bush is in the millions. The fucking millions. But nobody is looking to take this motherfucker to Nuremberg. And nobody ever will take this motherfucker to Nuremberg. Because people don't go to Nuremberg when they deserve it. People go to Nuremberg when it suits the agenda of everybody who's still in charge, who've just won a conflict, to punish the people who lost the conflict. Now, that's not a defense of the Nazis. I'm just explaining why the Nazis go to Nuremberg and why George Bush gets to retire to a mansion out in the fucking hills somewhere. And it's not because one guy deserved to retire peacefully and the other guy deserved to be hung from the neck till dead. It's just who benefits. That kind of cynicism is what people really should be paying attention to. Who benefits? What are people actually trying to do? You'll find if you ask just those very simple questions, that you'll find that progressives are not altruistic people. They're some of the most virulent racists, some of the most violent and sadistic people you have ever met. And it's funny to me that millions of people find them to be moral arbiters, good people. Even if I were to agree with the concept of punching Nazis because Nazis are deserving of being dehumanized, which to me doesn't mean I support punching them. It means I don't care if people punch them. And there is a meaningful difference. I'm not pro-punching them. I will not be participating with punching them. I wouldn't be supportive of any of my friends or family members announcing a desire to go out and punch them. I'd say you really shouldn't do that. It's not in your best interest or in the public's best interest to be doing that. But if I saw somebody punching a Nazi, I wouldn't feel sorry for them. I don't feel sorry for Richard Spencer. He's a fucking retard. But I think it's absolutely insane what has come of people punching him. Because it's not just people going, I don't care when Nazis get punched. What they're saying is, oh, punching Nazis is cool. Punching Nazis is in fact what you're supposed to be doing, and if you're not doing it, there's something wrong with you. And every single person in this conversation is lying about what is and is not a Nazi. In fact, it's become nothing more than a term of convenience for a bunch of violent and sadistic people to enact violent sadism. You see that and you go, oh wow, there is no nuance or complexity to this issue at all. It is just naked selfishness. Plain as day, clear as crystal, obvious and in your face. Why am I supposed to think that the progressives are saying anything of value or anything of nuance and that we have a duty to resist this shit? I want to leave you with this concept since I've been rambling for 20 minutes. And if you're still here, I'm going to reward you with something very, very important that I hope you already know. And if you don't, this is very important to know. Hitler did not use dictatorial violent suppression to gain power. Parts of some of the things he did were things like false flag attacks. Parts of some of the things he did involved violence. In fact, even when he was a junior member of the party that became the Nazis, he was involved in writing about violent shit all the time. And the thing is, there was a conflict, something of a social civil war in Weimar Germany, where two socialist groups that were remarkably similar to each other in concept. In fact, these two socialist groups that were existing in Germany had basically one fundamental difference between them. And I do mean one. Actually two. But one of them is less important. One of them was they had one of the groups had very postmodern ideas about art and expression, and had an obsession with subversion elements and changing everything, and the whole kill the past if you have to type approach to art and culture. That was one distinct thing between them, while the other one was about I don't know what the word is for it, like austerity, conserving the past in art, and very classical, I guess, in concept. And the other difference between them was one socialist group was aiming for the global revolution in the communist utopia, and the other socialist group was supporting a just basically state, nationally focused, culturally cohesive form of a socialist nation-state focused, still with the government intact focused socialism, while the other one, even though they always became the same as their enemies, this communist utopia group always did end up just enacting what the other socialist group did, and never got past that, because the communist utopia is a fucking retarded pipe dream that will never ever happen. So they basically were, more or less, with a few distinct differences here and there, a couple policy differences, they were almost exactly the same party. One of these parties became known as the National Socialist Workers' Party, or the Nazis. And the other one of these parties was known as, in German, I'm fucking going to mispronounce this or even probably say it wrong, but it's something, Antifaschiste Aktion, or something like that, which literally means anti-fascist action, shortened to Antifa. So, what caused Nazi Germany was a fight between two socialist groups who were basically the same, but ideologically opposed in such a way that it was less about that they were actually two different ideologies that were incompatible, but they were competing rivals to occupy the same space. The state, for one, and for two, to be the socialist revolution. And one of them won, and it was the Nazis. So that means that the anti-fascists were not the good guys. They were guilty of widespread property damage, murder, giant fucking riots, huge brawls in the streets, people getting killed, people getting hospitalized, people getting beat and hurt, tremendous amounts of collateral damage to civilians who didn't want to be involved in this conflict, and it went on and on and on, and there was bribery of the Weimar Republic and shit, so that one side would get the state to start arresting the rivals of the other side, and vice versa, and it was chaos. And Hitler managed, through some pretty surreptitious means, to basically get voted in, and he promised that to the public that he would shut the anti-fascists down, and that there would be peace and order return to the streets. And he kept that promise, and the public loved him for it, because the public didn't give a shit about this socialist infighting. The public wanted the chaos to stop. The progressive left, part of the reason why they will lose constantly and consistently, unless it's just in ideological echo chambers in places like the West Coast and northern Colorado, Austin, Texas, exploitative plantations like Baltimore and Detroit. Outside of these kind of strongholds, progressives aren't particularly popular at all. With the exception of like Chicago, New York, Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland. Nobody likes progressives. They think they're the majority, and they are not. They think they're majority because they look around on websites that constantly censor people who disagree with progressives and think that the people who disagree with progressives aren't around. No, they're being suppressed, censored, banned, temporarily suspended, shadow banned, losing commenting privileges, getting their pages deleted, all that shit, that kind of, authoritarian fascistic suppression that progressives are more than happy to use when they're in charge, because they are not different from the Nazis. They literally are the same thing. They literally are the Nazis. And it's not a colloquialism. It's not a witty comparison. It's not any kind of fucking allegory. Literally, progressive leftists are by definition, fascist Nazis. That is literally what they are. They are ethno-nationalist, state-controlled economy, state-controlled culture, welfare programs, forced morality. All that shit is all shit the Nazis did. The Nazis and the progressives are literally one and the fucking same, up to and including the point that I guarantee you they will start putting people in camps and killing people when given the opportunity. Mark my fucking words, they'll do it. I guarantee you, I'm not kidding, I'm not trying to alarm you, I'm just telling you the truth. They will kill you. And by they, I mean the people who have the balls to do it, but I guarantee you that the rest of the progressives will stand by and let it happen. Most of the Nazis weren't all about the final solution, but they stood by and let it happen. They will let your fucking question be solved too. Innocent American civilian, Western person from anywhere in Europe, Canada, America, anywhere. You will get the bullet too, I guarantee it. And this gets repeated throughout history, and no matter who lies about whether or not the Nazis were the right wing, because they were the left wing by definition, or whether or not the commies were right or left wing, they were the left wing by definition, whether or not this, that, or the other thing, really the major difference is who is allowed liberty and freedom, and who is more interested in security and control. You're currently being mocked for wanting the right to free speech, the right to defend yourself from rapists and murderers and robbers. They want to paint you, if a bunch of crackheads come into your house with knives and guns and try to kill your kids, and you shoot them, they want the public to know that you are the bad guy, not the home invaders, the robbers, the rapists. They're not the bad guys. You are. You are a Nazi just if you present the kind of world where Nazis are allowed to ever speak in. In fact, if you're not out there looking at whoever is a Nazi and trying to kill them, if that's not what you're doing with your political expression time, you are a Nazi. It's that simple. If you aren't out there supporting the fascist control of progressivism, you're a Nazi, which means you need to be fascistically controlled. It's plain as day, and it's not complex, it's not nuanced, it's not complicated at all. It is that. And you can't say otherwise, because you would be lying. And I invite you to try. Nobody ever does try. And believe me, I want you to try. I want you. Share this fucking video with your leftist friends and shit and get them to fucking scoff and shit. Now watch them very carefully. Will they ever try to argue with me? Or they'll call me a Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer, or they'll say I'm stupid and refuse to engage or watch the whole video or any of that. No, they don't got a half an hour for this kind of shit. Because they're not honest. They are liars, and they are either ostriches with their head in the sand, or they are cassowaries out here trying to cut people with their fucking raptor claws. But they're the same two things. They're the same one thing, I should say. And the difference between me and a lot of the general public is I don't think the ostrich with his head in the sand deserves to be differentiated from the cassowary. I believe one of the greatest evils in the world is the inaction of good people. And that, in fact, the fact that I am only minimally politically active in real life, that I do vote, and I do talk to you, and I don't do a whole lot else, because I don't feel like I'm suited to, would be good at, or should be responsible for doing more, except for I worry that I'm not doing enough still. And I find that to be morally reprehensible. And in fact, that kind of call to action is the same thing that attracts progressives. It's the same disease that catches us all. We are compulsive controllers, that we think that we know what's best for society and that society really should be doing what's best for itself. But we disagree about what's best. The scary thing to me is I think what's best is not complicated. It's not. I think there is a right answer. And I think the people who say that they're out here doing what's best for everybody are the knowing, willful, evil people who are deliberately doing what is worst for everybody. And I do mean themselves, the people they claim to protect, the LGBT, the black, the minorities, the marginalized citizens. They're out there harming those people. They lie to that extent, that the one thing they think gives them free rein to do whatever they want, to enact any evil by any means necessary. In fact, their Antifa group's literally named BAM, by any means necessary, an acronym. That what they are trying to do, by any means necessary, is evil in the goal as well as in the means they use to get there. Which just makes them evil. Full-blown Snidely Whiplash villains that we pretend don't exist, but they do. Thanks for watching.